will the DA continue its winning streak and add Tshwane to its crown? Well, council is holding its first sitting and is set to elect a new mayor. The DA's Randall Williams is standing against the ANC's Frans Boshielo. Let's speak to political analyst Khanyi Magubane about the recent developments. Khanyi, thank you very much. Perhaps to start with the most recent developments now. My colleague just spoke to Action SA and I was listening to him and Mashaba maintaining that their intention was to keep the ANC out of power. Is that really what citizens deserve? An agenda here that is purely just to remove each other, not necessarily to serve us. We're hearing very little about service to us, but more about keeping certain political parties out of power.
Thank you very much. I think that may be a bit of a cop-out from Herman Mashaba because nobody goes into an election race without the intention of winning. And we know that for a long time, Herman Mashaba wanted to win the city of Johannesburg. And on the back of a proposal that had been earlier made by the EFF to the ANC, basically saying that they would be happy if the ANC got city of Ekurhuleni, they got Tshwane, and there was a support for Herman Mashaba for city of Johannesburg. I think that Herman is speaking from a place of a broken heart, if I can put it quietly like that, because he had bigger aspirations in politics beyond keeping the ANC out of power. The power that you bring in as a political party has to be based on what you promised your electoral. And Herman Mashaba promised the electoral that he would deal with the inner city slums, that he would deal with the hijacking of buildings, the crime in Johannesburg, that he would deal with all the meter problems and the billing systems that persist in the city of Johannesburg. None of that had to do with the ANC prior to the events that have now transpired. So I think that, you know, Mashaba needs to be clear with his electorate. What was more important to him, being in the leadership seat or keeping the ANC out? Given that the DA has now moved in firmly into the mayoral and speaker positions in the city of Ekurhuleni and the city of Johannesburg, it's widely expected that they will do the same in the city of Tshwane. We know that the councillors have been sworn in or is still in the process of being sworn in. And what I would like to see is what happens when those votes start to be counted. There have been many surprises along this journey over the past 48 hours with some political coalition agreements falling apart at the last minute. And it will remain interesting to see if it will happen in the city of Tshwane, where the DA is widely expecting its agreements. I won't call them coalition agreements because they've gone into agreements with people that they don't necessarily have formal coalition agreements with, but a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, that you will vote for me and we will stick together.
Let's talk about those gentlemen's agreement. I mean, the fragile nature of such agreements. We will be at a disservice as ordinary citizens here because what we're seeing is that you have John Steenhuisen, who earlier goes on to state that I know you weren't voting in favor of the Democratic Alliance, speaking of the EFF, but I know that the intention again was to vote out the ANC. Now, with all these egos flying around, again I ask, can we see stability in these metros if we're hearing so much and everybody concedes that these governments are in fact very fragile?
Well, I think John Steenhuisen knows that he's not going to have an easy ride. If what happened in 2016 is anything to go by, I think after 5 years, the DA would have lost all the metros that it has currently won. We saw a similar picture play out under the leadership of Mmusi Maimane. The DA had city of Johannesburg under Herman Mashaba. They had Solim Simang in the city of Tshwane, Ethel Trollip in the Nelson Mandela Bay. But throughout the course of the 5 years, they were systematically pushed out through political maneuverings of other political parties. This time around, I think the multi-party group, as they call themselves, who have accused the Democratic Alliance of blindsiding them because they had given an impression that they would vote with them as part of the minority coalition agreement to push Herman Mashaba forward as city of Johannesburg. At the last minute, the DA pulled out and said it's putting forward its own candidates in Mpho, Phalatse, of course, who's gone on to become the mayor of City of Johannesburg, and Randall Williams, who's largely expected to also do the same in the city of Tshwane. So I think what he has done, John Steenhuisen, is unleashed a dagger of a long game that other political parties will play with him. And he knows this. He knows nobody has his back, so to speak, and that the only thing he can do is try and court the smaller political parties who need bigger partners at the moment to have a presence on the councils. So I think that blood is on the floor, as I've mentioned before. We're still going to see the worst before it gets better.
Very, very difficult times. But as for Dr. Phalatse herself, I mean, a former MMC, is she equal to the task?
So, there's an excitement right now around the fact that the city of Johannesburg has a black female woman as its mayor, which is the first of its kind. I think we're at a point right now where we want to give Mpho a chance as a mayor, but of course we know that the DA politics will not play in her favor. And I'm really hoping that other political parties will not think that because she's a woman that they can easily bulldoze her and bully her. I'm hoping that Mpho Phalatse will stand her ground, that she will be a tough mayor, that she will get things done. She does have a record of acting swiftly, especially in previous portfolios that she has led. And this will be a very testing time for the city of Johannesburg, where it's being run by a political party that doesn't have the full protection and support of other political parties. And it knows this. And it knows that to a large extent, it has to play nice. Otherwise, the power that it has inadvertently given to parties like the EFF, who have voted with them to put them in position, they know that they have to nurture that relationship, because it can easily turn volatile at any given time, as seen in previous coalition agreements that they've had with them, which eventually fell apart.
Just in closing, many would say that the ball is in fact in the court of the Democratic Alliance. Do you perhaps think a more humbler approach towards some of these political parties would benefit this type of arrangement?
Absolutely. I think that the DA needs to swallow its pride to a certain extent and backtrack on some of the number of statements that they've made, including one very strongly from John Steenhuisen saying under no circumstances will the Democratic Alliance work with the EFF. We know that in other municipalities across the country, they've had, to yield some of those compromises to work with other politicians. And of course, Khanyi Magubane last night said that the Action SA is open to talk to the Democratic Alliance, but they have to be clear that the EFF is also part of those discussions. They should not try and talk to Action SA in isolation. If they talk to them, they must know that the EFF is also in the mix.
Khanyi, we could be in for it, but thank you very much for your time. That's political analyst Khanyi Magubane there, weighing in on the mayoral outcomes as councillors hold their first sittings post-elections.